Okay, so we are now doing the Hakdama, the introduction to Siman Ayin Tes, and really to the next coming Simonim, all about the halachas of tzoya, of bathroom halachas, regarding if you find tzoya, reach ra, meraglaim, etc. And the Mishnah Berurah says, before he begins Siman Ayin Tes, he says, Atik bekan Hakdama le Siman Zeh. I'm going to now put in a Hakdama, an introduction to this Siman, and like I said, to the coming Simonim. Ve'ikarahu miloshna Pri Megadim. It's largely based on the Pri Megadim, b'Siman Zeh v'Sham HaKomis, in this Siman and other places. Ulefamim b'Shinu Loshen K'tzas, and I've changed the Loshen a little bit, K'dei Shivu Heitev, so that people could understand it. I've sort of pulled all the different aspects together. Ach b'Izim HaKomis b'Berarti Hadova. Sometimes I've just elaborated on the words of the Pri Megadim. She'im Muskemes Ledina, which is unanimous in halacha. Gam lefi Shari Poskim Achronim, incorporating the views of the other poskim. V'zeh l'shoinei. So this is the Hakdama over here. V'zeh l'shoinei. B'terem shenova levaya po b'siman zeh. Before we begin to explain this siman of V'sham HaKomus ha'ikarim minyonim elu, the essential background details for this siman and the coming simonim, agdim kan Hakdama ha'koleles hanitzruch ma'od leida oisa. I'm going to give you some rules to understand this well. V'hu. There are 10 different categories of halacha regarding tzoya, excrement, and halacha regarding kriyashma, learning, davening, etc. Here we go, 10 categories. Aleph, tzoya mila'achrav mitzdadim, if the tzoya is behind him or to the side. Lefonov, base, if it's in front of him. Gimel, b'mokum gvei asar namach asar, if it's in a place which is more than 10 tefachim up or lower than 10 tefachim. Daled, tzoya b'chede achar or pesach pasuach, if the tzoya is in a different room and the door is open. Hey, tzoya ba'ashoshis, if the tzoya is behind some sort of barrier, like a see-through glass barrier, a fence, mechitza. Vov, tzoya b'mayim, if the tzoya is in the water. Zayin reach rash yesh le'ikah, if there's a bad smell which has a substance, a source to it. Ches tzoya averes, if it's passing by. Tes din meiraglayim. Va'avit ugraf shel rei, the halachas of meiraglayim, of urine. Va'avit and ugraf shel rei, of chamber pots, where you're holding the tzoya or the meiraglayim, and a graf shel rei, something which is considered despicable in that respect. And yud ashba v'tzoya behema, an ashba, a garbage heap, a rubbish heap, v'tzoya behema, and the tzoya of an animal. So those are the 10 categories. Now he's going to go through each one and give you the background knowledge. Aleph, tzoya me'achrov min atzodim, says the Mishnah Berurah. Tzoya me'achrov min atzodim toich arba amas. If the tzoya is behind you or next to you within arba amas, also min haTorah likros kriyashma, it is also min haTorah to say kriyashma or lehispalal and to daven, or ledaber divrei Torah, and to speak divrei Torah, or levarach shem bracha, or indeed to make any bracha. That's the Ramban b'Likutov about making brachas. Mishum shenema, but it says in the pasuk, v'hoya machanecha kadosh, v'chol toich arba amas chanir shel adamhu, and anything within arba amas, that is your camp, that is your place. V'im kar b'mokum shor listapik v'achach motza, if a person did go ahead and read Kriya Shema in a place where he should have had some doubt, maybe there's soa there or not, he's got to read it again. Commotion ispire, b'soif siman ayin vav ayin sham. Good. Base, category number 2. Tzoya melefonov, if the tzoya is in front of him, marchik mole einov, he's got to distance himself out of his eyesight, that he can no longer see it. And the Rosh and the Rashba argue about this. The lav the lo yira b'chol ervastova, the lav of not seeing an ervastova koi nami atzoya is also relates to tzoya. And therefore it comes out there is a stringency. Even if the tzoya is in a different room, that anyone who can see it, it is also for him to read Kriya Shema, even Torah, like if there was an erva there. There is a kula, there is a leniency according to the Rashba, that if it's beyond 4 amas, even though it's within his eyesight, thinking in Torah would be okay, because it's got the same din as erva, and just like with erva it would be okay, so to here. The lav de lo yira, the Rosh argues and says that this pasuk of lo yira of lo yira b'chol ever stava is going specifically on erva and not on tzoya. Of tzoya lekarak isa mishum machanecha kodesh, and the only prohibition of tzoya is machanecha kodesh. Im kain kula laharosh, that comes out of kula for the rosh. To beched acher afal pisha roya somuta, that in a different room, even though he sees it, it's muta. Mitam degoli krod de b'shus acheres lav machanechu, because if it's in a different room, it's not considered machanecha, and therefore, according to the Rosh, it would not be a problem. Umad also b'ched acher lefonov k'molenov hu mitam is a drabonon, and the only prohibition will be that of a drabonon. Oy gam kein min haTorah, perhaps min haTorah dechol sherei so lefonov k'molenov b'chlal chaniyahu also. You could argue that if it's in your eyesight still, this is still called your chaniya, and therefore it might be also. It comes out there for a chumrah for the Rosh, that if it's in your eyesight, there would still be an issa drabonon to say krishma, or midaraisa, or even midaraisa of mokum chaniyahu, because possibly if it's in your eyesight, according to the Rosh, that would still be caught by machanecha, it's still considered your camp. That which the Prichodosh writes, then according to him, there will not be a chumrah for the Rosh. He quotes other nafkaminas bein Rosh l'Rashba v'chazim imenu b'siman pei aleph is test be'esh lavram v'kach le'takdi. Therefore, because he himself retracts, I have not incorporated it in my Mishnah Berurah. Okay, that's the end of the first two categories. Category number 3, Gimel. Tzaya b'makom gavoya asara. If the tzaya is in a high place, in a place lower than 10 tefachim, to have a rishus acheres. La rosh afilu shari. According to the Rosh, that afilu roya shari, even if you see it, it will be allowed. The lav de lo yira lekoi alo, because the lav of lo yira is not going on that. La rashba, however, also can izgalel, like we said above. It would help, according to everybody, closing your eyes, because it's in a different rishus. Ken kozol mishpah zayzov v'sosim Pai Hamogan Avram Sif Cotton Ches, and he concludes like the Mogan Avram. For Sham Chazim is there Umashma Daitel Hachmir. He does retract, and he's actually his intention is lahachmit. He is going to be machmir. V'mokum matchak yesh lahakel, that closing your eyes will be okay. If this area needs to be of width 4 tvachim yisbar b'fnim emiras Hashem, that will come to in the Mishnah Berurah. Dalet, category number 4. Tzaya b'cheder acher or Pesach pasuach. If the tzaya is in a different room and the door is open, oy tzaya lifnei Pesach, or the tzaya is in front of the door, ava pisha, so even though you can see it, la rosh shari, according to the Rosh, it will be okay after the lekadelas, even if there is no actual door in the frame. The lav de lo yira lo koi b'chia gavna, because lo yira is not going on this at all. It's only going on erva, not on tzaya, according to the Rosh. The lo garim mashe kosa bo iskimel. Or la rashba also. It's no worse than what we read above in the iskimel. Or la rashba also, but according to the Rashba, it will still be osa. Va'efsha the biyesh delis, but it could be that if there is a proper door in the frame, gam la rashba muta mitam the pesach pasuach chnol domi. It could say that pesach, that mitam pesach pasuach is as if it's closed, and therefore that would be in a different, it's not caught by the pasuk of lo yeh b'chayr v'stov, etc. Ein sham. After divra Shulchan Aruch le mashma, it's not mashma from this according to Shulchan Aruch, k'meshikos ha-mishpah zov ba'atzma, like the Mishpah himself says. V'chein kol achreinim sosma b'zev v'lo chilku. Okay, hey, category 5. Tzayam b'ushoshis muta. If the tzay is behind the barrier, then it's okay. Why? To be kisu tali rachmana, because the Torah requires it depends if it's behind a barrier, and this is behind a kisu, is considered covered, and therefore it's okay. Or mashman pirish Rashi. According to Rashi and the Rambam, even if the tzaya is not actually covered, that even if it's not actually covered, but you've got a glass in front of the tzaya, that is considered a barrier, a cover. The lav dafka sheyichas hatzor mikol sodov, and lav dafka that the actual tzeh is covered from all sides. Va'afilu lahabach heviu hataz b'sif cotton gimel to b'mokum gavoya bo in a new tefachim al reichav dalet tefachim al dalet tefachim. You need that dimension. But mechitza lo bo in zeh. When it comes to mechitza, you don't need that dimension. V'chol sheyesh hefsek in the tzeh shari. So long as there is a barrier between you and the tzeh, it would be allowed to say Kriya Shema, etc. V'zeu kisui, because this is the kisui. Dvarav Pshutim Oid, and his words are very straightforward. V'tzorchin aliyah l'rabba b'siman pei zayin shekosu shalom in mitzah, gavoy asorat shemafsekes bein l'tzoya. This is therefore questionable on the Eli Rabba, who says that regarding a bed which is higher than 10 tefachim, which is mafsik between him and the tzoya, there's a barrier between him and the tzoya, that he requires that the mechitzas should go down to the ground. And it comes out you don't really need that, because all you need is a barrier between you and the tzoya, and therefore it's tzorchi, what he says. The width of the mechitza, lo zocha prima godim, but the prima godim makes no mention of that. If the mechitza is in the house, it's got to stretch from one wall to the other wall, and if this mechitza is in a field, lo zocha shira, there's no mention of the width required of this mechitza. Anything which is of width, 4 tefachim, chashiv mechitza lahatzik negda, that would be a good mechitza. But not in the airspace. If the tzoya is outside, and he can see it through a glass window or something, again, that is okay. Because the glass window is a good mechitza, that's fine. Even the Rashba in Sif Beis, who asks us if it's in a different rishus, so when you can see it, but even though you can see it because it's through a glass, that is considered a mechitza, and therefore it would be mutter if it's on the other side of a window, etc., because that is considered a good mechitza. Okay, category number 6, hashishis. Tzoya b'mayim, lav kisui hava. Tzoya which is in the water is not considered a kisui. In number 8, he says that's dafka talking about clear water. So you've got some excrement, some tzoya in the water, then it's a problem to say Kriya Shema. That's only if the water is clear. Ulam b'mayim machurim, if the water is somewhat cloudy, then the Mishnah Berurah says previously, shenechshavim lekisui, that would be considered a kisu. Okay, good. Carrying on the Hakdoma, Afal Gav, just the beginning of where it says Shishi, Afal Gav de Legabe Erva have a kisu. Even though for Erva it's considered a kisu, Besiman Hey, Besiman Ayin Dayad, Aladad Sivkot Neches, but Tzoya Loi, with regard to Tzoya, is not considered a kisu if the water is clear. Kesiman Ayin Vov, but Morgan Avram Sivkot Tes. Tichsiv Chisisa. V'hai lav kisu mikra ma'shenkin legabi gilu erva. So with gilu erva, even clear water would be okay, but when it comes to tzoya, if the water is clear, then you've got a problem, and you cannot say Kriya Shema unless it's the water is somewhat cloudy, like we said. Shvi, the 7th category, reach ra, bad smell, sheyesh le'ikka, which has a source to it, havi katzer min Torah, that is considered like tzoya min Torah. Al kein tzorich lisrachik mila'achrav dalad amas v'mokum shekol hareach, and therefore you've got to distance yourself 4 amas from where the smell stops. V'im kara choyz v'karin. If you did read it, you got to reread it. You got to say it again. But in one respect, it is a little bit more lenient than tzoya. That if it's in a different room, after if it's in a different room, you don't need daladamas from where the smell stops. That is, so long as it's in a different room, as long as the smell doesn't hit you, then you're okay. Even in the room, rather the smell reaches you, since it doesn't actually reach you next door, then it's mutter. But if the smell does waft through to the next room, also because Lamais is in a different room, because it's considered in halacha as reach ra she'ein la'ika, because it's in a different room. The Isur rak midrabanan, in that situation the Issa is only midrabanan. Fine. Okay, Pasuk al Rabbi Prisha de Leiklevush, v'chein hetika der Chaim la'aloch olam medivra grob ve'er al sif beis tiba hamaschel larosh mashma de soive kalvush the ein behefsek rishus be'inin dalad amas makom shel kol hareach v'chein hetika chayodem klal din chof beis. Okay, achakach. Okay, we'll leave out the rest of the brackets. It's not essential. Good. V'chein b'chayim b'chay odom. Over derech Chaim, I'm jumping to just after the brackets. Over v'chein b'derech Chaim din hanal. of derech Chaim din chavtes mashma gamkein sheposek harekeach to mechusa mikra reach ra sheish lo ikka, that even if it's covered, it's considered the reach ra which has an ikka, v'seim b'seifo eshkol gamkein daitakein. Okay, that's the end of the 7th category. Hashmini, the 8th category. Tsoya overis, if it's tsoya which is passing through, which is being transported, ve'ein omed b'mkome, it's not stationary. Gamkein who din Torah, so too min Torah kain mash b'gemara or pasuk HaShulchan Aruch b'sif b'ayin vav in siman ayin vav sif gimel the lefon of kamal einav v'larchav dalad amas, that's even if it's in front of it, it's not stationary, that it's being moved, is transported, then the halacha is still that it's in front of it, it's kamal einov, you can't see it, and behind you it's got to be more than dalad amas away. The Rambam actually says in the Bach Paskins like this, that in front of you, if it's veres, if it's moving, all you need is dalad amas. So imagine you've got a child's diaper which is being taken out of the room, that if it's more than, according to the Rambam, which the Bach Paskins like, if it's more than dalad amas away from you, then it's okay. According to the first opinion, it's got to be out of your eyesight. Hachi, the 9th category, meraglaim. Minat Torah also rak neget ha'amud. We've said this previously, that Minat Torah, the issue of meraglaim, is only a problem if there is a stream that is in front of you. Hoshaisis, v'kolshkein me'ara, but if it's just dripping, or if it's actually on the ground, then the only issa is midrabanan. But nonetheless, one needs to distance oneself according to, it shouldn't be in your eyesight, or and behind you, then it's got to be more than dalad amas away. That's only when it's not putrid and smelling. However, if it's smelling, if the urine, if the meraglaim is smelling, then midinat Torah also, then it's not also midrabon, it's actually also minat Torah. Ha'asiri, the 10th and final category, ashba, a rubbish heap, a garbage heap, shereich ra, who's got a bad smell, or nevela shemisrachas, and nevela, which like a rodent or a carcass or some meat or something, which is bad and is smelling. V'chol davar ki'etzba, anything similar. Dinoi ketzoya, it's got a din of tzoya, u'minat Torah also, and then even minat Torah, it is also to say kriya shema, learn and daven. After prima godim lenizkarak stam ashba, even though the Prima Godim just talks about a stam ashba, mikol makom yodua lemahayin v'hetiv ba'alochazu, the stam ashba ein bichlal zeh, that unless it's got a bad smell, it's not going to be included in this. Rak kashiyodua reichara, unless, of course, you know that it's got a bad smell. Di'lav hochi asur rak mishum destome yesh b'tzer meraglaim, because otherwise there is just a presumption that there is soya and meraglaim there. But if you know there isn't, perhaps nowadays where Baruch Hashem there is good plumbing systems and people don't really go to the bathroom in these sort of areas, then ein tzorech lahaching, you don't need to distance yourself from it. We're talking about where a situation where the smell is very strong. Ve'ein darken lefasik meher, it's not going to dissipate quickly. Or kafi haskamas hamogen ram besif kotten yud gimel. Halav hachi ein tzorech lahachig ra ad sheich larech. You only have to move away and from the point where it just doesn't smell anymore. Kain and niril aniyas daiti. That is how it appears in my humble opinion. Vuadin of it shel meraglaim, and so too a bedpan, a chamber pot, shel meraglaim, which holds meraglaim, or graf shel rei, nami min haTorah, also they would also be also min haTorah. Olin in tzoyas behema v'chai, regarding animal tzoya, yivur b'soif hasimon, that comes later in this simon. The reach ra she'en lo ikan, a reach ra which has no source, also rak midrabanon, that is also midrabanon. Kain mevur b'lekutei Ramban b'er dinav v'ayin b'soif hasimon u'mechusu v'reich noidef, and regarding something which is covered v'reich noidef and its smell is wafting, ayin el ba'is zayin. Okay, that is the end of the Akdama, and that hopefully will help us as we prepare for the coming Simone. Thank you.